Welcome to Let's Make a Game Platformer, episode 16. In last episode, I've added this new game button that allows us to enter the game, and I've added the transition between game states. So when a player dies, the player is moved to the main screen, and when the player finishes the level, it's moved to the next level, unless it's the last one, which then moves into my main screen. That's all fine. However, there is one thing that was not taken care of whenever the level is unloaded. So if you remember, in one of the previous episodes, I've added that each block, for example, the exit portal creates an entity when the level is loaded. This entity is not being unloaded. So what I will do now is, in the level system, whenever we unload level, at the end, I will go through all the entities that are available in the context and destroy them. This will destroy all entities, including the player character entity, which is something we want to keep. So what I'll do here is add a new component, keep without level component. It's going to be an interface. Extends component, and I'll make sure that the player prefab has this component. So we'll add here a keep without level component. That way we'll keep our player component between levels when we're going to be unloading and loading them. So in here we'll check if entity that doesn't have component keep without level component, we'll destroy it. This is gonna cause a couple of trouble, but let's run it and see what the trouble is. Okay, so I'm going to first level, and here we have a problem. The problem is all the providers we have within the gameplay. So all these three entity providers, they create the entity whenever the system is initialized. So when we destroy this entity, this is no longer the reference here. The entity ref is not pointing to an existing entity anymore. So we have to make sure that we recreate them whenever they are needed. So instead of doing it initialize, we will do in here if game loop entity is equal to null or game loop entity no longer exists, then we will create it. Okay, and the same for the rendering entity, but we'll be creating it from the prefab. So we no longer, okay, in here we need if camera entity is null or doesn't exist, because this entity ref is a reference to an entity. So this reference can be pointing to something, to an entity that no longer exists, which is why we have to, because it was destroyed, this is why we have to check that it exists. And for time entity, we don't need lifecycle system anymore. And we'll do the same here. If time entity is null or time entity no longer exists, we have to create it. Okay, so let me run it. So maybe let me show what's the problem if we don't do this for a second. And to demonstrate it, I have to extend the platform here by 2. So we go 3 and 4. So let me run it. So this is first level. It has 5 blocks, and then on the fifth block there is the exit portal. So let's finish first level, and we have here 5 blocks as well. And in here there is an exit portal created by the previous level, which has not been destroyed yet. So if I go here, I finish the level. That's why we have to destroy all the entities, and that should fix this problem. Okay, so I go here to the right here, and I'm no longer exiting the level. I exit only when I get to that other portal. Okay, so this is first thing I wanted to do in this episode. Let me just destroying all entities upon level unload. So what I want to do actually in this episode, what I planned for this episode, is to add some user interface elements into the gameplay. What I want to do, especially and right now, is add a timer to show how long this level is being played at the top of the screen. Score, something which is going to be recording a score for a player. At the moment it's going to be always 0 because we have no way of increasing the score, but it's something that we'll add later on. And also amount of lives, how many. So each player will have, when you start a game, you'll have 3 lives or whatever number of lives that we'll define in the player prefab, because that's what's created whenever a player is created. And whenever player dies, rather than going directly to the exit, to the main menu, the player will respawn at the beginning of the level. Later on, we'll be adding some checkpoints where if you progress in a level, at some point you'll be able to sort of record your position where you were whenever you do something. Okay, so let's start off with adding a user interface. And similarly as we did for the menu, I will have to add the stage UI to the gameplay profiles. So now we have stage provided, and stage UI available. And let's, in the rendering, let me create a new class called gameplay UI system. Register it, and we will need to inject what we need is a stage provider, and I'll copy the button, the text font implements life circle system, and in the initialize method I will create the font. I will call it label font, and I'll make the size much smaller than that, 20, and just one border width. Maybe I will not do any border at all. Let's see. This is easy to change, as you can see in here. Specify 0, and it's going to be 0 font. Okay, so in here, so we did this in the splash screen ended. So in here instead, we'll be doing this in the initialize method. We'll be doing get stage provider, get stage, add actor, and we'll do label let's call it here label time label, and we'll have a score label as well. So we'll have time label, and here we have to specify text and a style. Okay, so let's create a label style. Where we have to pass the label font and font color. White. And let's first start off with 0, 0, 0. This is something that we're going to be updating on every refresh of the screen, on every screen repaint. Okay, and also we'll have a score label. Let's start with 0 or score 0 and label style. Also in the post destroy, we'll have to dispose the label font. One more thing I forgot to do in the last one is I have to dispose the generator immediately after I finish using it. So here, generator, dispose. Okay. So once again, we'll have a table to allow us to much easier to specify the locations of the elements, and we'll specify that it has to be on the top. So rather than being centered in the middle of the screen, it's going to be centered on the top, and we will add time label and score label. This returns, I believe, cell. Yes, cell. Okay. So let's for now do this way, and I have to pass a table here, and we have to specify that this is profiles gameplay. Okay, so let's see how it goes. So it didn't work. I don't see anything. Okay, let's maybe start off with gameplay. I know what happened. I did not make it UI processor. I have to notify. Let's do it after physics. Okay, still nothing. Okay, let me debug this for a second. Okay, so the problem was I didn't specify that that table should fill out the parent, so it was taking some minimal amount of space. And now when I run it, you can now see the time and score. At the moment they are here. We'll move them to the top using this, and we are going to add padding 10 to both of those elements and make this one right aligned. Okay, that's not enough. I have to specify here that it's going to be fill X. So filling the remaining space in the X axis. I believe that's what's going to fix this. Maybe then I'll get rid of the right, so it's more on the centered. Let's see how this looks. That didn't work. Okay, I'll worry about it in a moment. I have to read on a bit more about this. I'm really new to the whole UI in libgdx. Anyway, we have already stuff here. So what we want to be able now to do is to increment the time. And to do this, we have to do it on every modify time game loop update on every game loop update event. So what we will do, okay, here is get the inject time manager, and one of the methods in time manager, let's import this. One of the methods in time manager is get time, which is time in milliseconds since this entity has been created, which is something that you want to have because whenever a level is reloaded or next level is loaded or player enters the game for the first time, you want the time, that's when the time want to start. So now we have to divide this time by 1000 to get seconds. Yeah, you have to cast it to integer, and then seconds since start, and then minutes since start. We divide this by 60 as an integer, so it's going to be rounded down, and then the remaining seconds is seconds. So let's say minutes to display, seconds to display, or is there a time format, date time format? No, this won't help us anything. Okay, seconds display is seconds since start minus to display multiplied by 60. Okay, and now we have to construct a string out of it. That's probably a much nicer way, but I'll just go with hard coding it. To display, seconds to display plus this, and then seconds to display is less than 10, so it's less than 2 characters. We will have seconds 0 plus seconds to display. Otherwise, seconds to display. Okay, and we'll have to set the label of the time label set text to display. So let's see if it works. So now we should be seeing the time being modified. Okay, almost there. I think I should be having here minutes to display, not seconds to display. We might change it to have the time actually count down from some number, and this number will be probably stored in the level. Each level will have a different time to finish it, and when it reaches 0, we will send an event that player died, or something like that. Okay, so we have now time being incremented. Now let's work on the score for a second. So what we'll do here, we'll receive event, score modified on the, so after component updated, and let's create here a logic. We'll have a new package here, score, and we'll have a new component called score component. And we'll have one property here. It's going to be of type int, get score, and it's going to be writable as well, so set score. So we want to have player component and score component. Let me just remove these. Okay, and in here we'll say that score label, set text, score, and score get score. Okay, so whenever a score is modified, it will be displayed here. So let's go with it. Our player now will have a score component in it. With a score of 0. We don't have to specify because by default integers are 0, but let's explicitly specify it here. And let's say that whenever a exit is reached, so whenever level completed, in our score we'll have a scoring system. Implements we don't have to implement anything. We'll have to do profiles gameplay and receive event level completed event entity ref entity, and it has to be a player component. It has to have a player component and it has to have a score component. And if so, we will say that score, set score, score, get score plus, let's go for 1000. Add entity ref, save changes. So whenever level is completed, this is something that is fired here by the level exit system. It's on the entity that has the player component, it fires level completed. And in here, if an entity with a player component has a score component and this level completed has been called on it, we'll increment the score by 1000. Okay, so what we should see now is that whenever we enter the portal, So the first portal, our score should increase by 1000. So let's see if this works. Our score is 0. Our score is 1000. Awesome. Okay, that's it for this episode. Make sure to like it and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching. Bye.